Hi guys, and welcome back to the Aspiring Home Cook. In today's video, you're going to join me as I whip up this amazingly simple and delicious zucchini curry with some crumb fried oyster mushrooms. It's a beautiful combination and hits the spot just right every time I have this hankering for good old Goan soul food. So let's get straight into today's recipes. I'm going to start off by prepping my rice. I'm going to serve this curry with some piping hot rice today. I'm using basmati rice, so I like to get a little bit of a head start and let this soak for about 20 to 30 minutes before I can actually cook it. All I'm doing is measuring out as much as we'll need for the meal. I give it a good rinse about 2 to 3 times with some cold water just to make sure I'm getting rid of any impurities and things like that. And then I'm going to let this soak in some water at room temperature while I get the rest of my ingredients ready. Next, we're moving on to the spices for our curry. Today, I'm making my curry just using powdered spices to keep things easy. For the spice blend, I'm going to use 1 heaped teaspoon of Kashmiri chili powder. You can use any other mild chili powder, it'll work just as well. And you can adjust this quantity to suit your preferences. Next, I'm going to add a teaspoon of garlic powder, about 1.5 teaspoons of coriander powder. I usually make this coriander powder myself. If you haven't seen that video on how I make some of my spice powders at home, I'll leave a link in the description box below for you, as well as right up here in the top right hand corner of the video for you to check out. Next, I'm going to add, I'd say about 1/8 of a teaspoon of black pepper powder, 3/4 of a teaspoon of cumin powder, and about 1/4 teaspoon of some turmeric powder. That's your spice blend for the curry. It's a beautiful variety of colors and the flavors are absolutely gorgeous. To balance out the flavors in this curry, for sourness today, I'm going to use some dried mango and a couple of pieces of kokum. If you don't have access to this, simply adjust the amount of tamarind that you use. I'm also going to add some tamarind pulp to my curry. So adjust these quantities to get the curry tasting just the way you like it. I'm just going to use a little walnut-sized ball of tamarind and I'm going to soak it in about 1/4 cup of warm water. You don't need hot water for this. Just warm water will work perfectly fine. It'll soften that tamarind and make it easier to extract the pulp that we're looking for. For the curry, I'm also going to use half an onion finely chopped. And just for a little more flavor, I'm going to add in 1 little birdseye chilli. I'm only going to slit this right through the center. I don't want too much of the heat, just the flavor of the chili. In a pot over some medium heat, I'm going in with about 1 teaspoon of coconut oil. Once that oil starts heating up, I'm going to add in the chili and the onion. And we're going to saute that till the onions soften and start developing a little color. While the onions are cooking away, it's a great idea to get the rice started off so that everything is ready at around the same time and you can sit down to a nice hot meal. This is how I typically make my plain boiled rice. To make that cooking process even faster, I pour water from a recently boiled kettle into a pot, or you can simply bring some water to a boil in the vessel itself, and I cook my rice like you would any sort of pasta. Into that boiling water goes your rice. This is the same rice that we had soaking for about half an hour earlier. I've simply drained that water, run it through fresh running water again, and drained that water out as well and added it to the pot. We're going to add some salt in there and let that come to a boil and cook off. In the meanwhile, our onions look like they're coming along just right. They've started developing a little color around the edges, and that's what we're looking for. At this stage, we're going to add in our spice powders. Stir that through really well. Make sure that your heat is on a medium level at this stage because you don't want those spice powders to burn. I like to add just a tiny splash of water at this point to prevent those powders from burning. About 1 tablespoon or so, not too much. And you're going to continue letting those spices warm through. I like to add this water in a couple of stages as needed. If you think you've got enough in at that first instance, you don't need to add your second lot of about a spoonful. But if not, you can do just as I've done and add a tiny bit more. What this does is it makes almost a sort of spice paste right then and there in your vessel. Now those powders don't need very long to warm through, so after they've had about 30 to 40 seconds to warm through, I'm going to go in with some coconut milk. This is full fat coconut milk. If you've got access to an abundance of coconuts, feel free to use freshly extracted coconut milk as well. Give that a good stir and mix those spices through. And just to make sure you get every last bit of that coconut milk from the can, I like to add in a little bit of water into the can itself, swirl it around and add that to the pot. At this stage, you can go ahead and add in that dry mango and kokum if you're using it. Stir that through. We're going to add a little salt to taste. And at this stage, I'm just going to let this curry come to a boil, and once it reaches a boil, turn the heat down and let it simmer away. I'm just going to move the curry to the back burner and let it simmer away for about 10 to 15 minutes after it comes to a boil. In the meanwhile, we're going to get ready to fry up our crumbed oyster mushrooms. I'm going to start off by heating the oil that we're going to use for deep frying. I've used a little bit of sunflower oil here. Now, since we're making this a vegan version, I'm not going to use an egg wash. Instead, I'm going to make a little batter to dip the mushrooms in first. I've got half a cup of all-purpose flour or plain flour. To this, I'm going to add about 1 tablespoon of cornflour. To bring out all the flavors, seasoning the batter is key. I'm adding in a little bit of salt, some pepper powder to taste. And just to make things a little interesting, I'm going to go in with a little pinch of some extra hot cayenne pepper powder. Whisk all these ingredients together, and you're going to make this into a nice batter, fluid enough to coat those mushrooms. Add the water in gradually and whisk this up. The amount of water that you'll need to use will really depend on the batch of flour that you're using, and it can differ from time to time. So make sure you're going in gradually, and you're going to whisk this until no lumps remain and you get a consistency that looks similar to what you can see here. It doesn't need to be too runny, but at the same time, it shouldn't be too thick. You want it just right to coat those mushrooms. Taste for salt and adjust the seasoning if you need to. Otherwise, your batter is ready to go. We're going to crumb fry these mushrooms today, so I'm just getting some breadcrumbs prepped here. Now, some of these oyster mushrooms can be really big, so I'm just going to break them in about 2 or 3 pieces, just so that they become easier to coat and crumb, and they fry evenly as well. You want these to be nice bite-sized pieces, not great big chunks. Of course, if that's the look you're going for, you can leave them whole as well. So the smaller ones I'll leave whole, but the bigger ones I'll break down into smaller pieces. Before we get to the frying process, my curry has simmered away beautifully and is almost ready. It's just got a couple of minutes to go. At this stage, I'm going to slice my zucchini into thick-ish slices like you can see here, and I'm going to add it to the curry. Zucchini cooks off really fast, so make sure you're not overcooking this, otherwise it just turns mushy and doesn't have any bite or texture to it. And that's why I add it towards the end of the cooking process. At this stage, I'm also going to add that tamarind water or tamarind pulp. Add it to taste. You're looking for a nice tart flavor to come through, but the flavors in the curry need to be balanced at the same time. Give that curry one last stir and go in with those zucchini slices. I cook the curry just for another couple of minutes from this point on to help that zucchini retain a little bite and texture. And that's the curry all done. Don't stir too vigorously at this stage. You don't want those slices breaking down. By this time, your rice should have also cooked beautifully. Drain all the excess water, cover the pot and leave it aside. I like to let the rice stand for a few minutes before I can serve. This helps the grains fluff out really well and finish cooking. With those 2 bits done, we're ready to fry our mushrooms. All I'm going to do is dip this in our batter, make sure that all sides are coated, and then that goes into the breadcrumbs. It's a good idea to reserve one hand just for the batter and the other hand just for the breadcrumbs. This way you don't end up with a big gloopy mess. And carefully add these mushrooms to the hot oil. I'm going to let these mushrooms fry away on some medium heat till they develop a nice beautiful golden brown. And we're going to continue this process and fry the rest of the mushrooms. Once the mushrooms have developed a little color, carefully flip them over so that they cook through on the other side as well. You really don't need to worry about the mushrooms cooking through because they cook through really fast. All you want is that batter and crumb to fry off well and develop a nice color. When the mushrooms are a nice golden brown, you'll notice that they develop a nice crispy crust. Carefully drain any excess oil. You can use a slotted spoon. It's safer to use a slotted spoon. Let the excess oil drain off. Set these pieces aside. I like to set it on some kitchen paper and continue cooking the rest of the mushrooms. Once that's done, you're ready to serve up. These fried mushrooms are great as a side dish to a main meal, and they also work really well as finger food or an appetizer. I'm going to show you a handy little dipping sauce that I like to serve alongside it. In a little bowl I've got about a tablespoon, a heaped tablespoon of my homemade vegan mayo. I'll add a link to the video down in the description box below. To this I'm going to add about a teaspoon of tomato ketchup and a few drops of some Tabasco sauce. Now this tomato ketchup and Tabasco sauce, you can adjust those quantities to suit your liking. You can make as much or as little of this dipping sauce as you'd like. All that's left to do is give this a good stir till everything has mixed through completely. It literally takes a minute, under a minute to put together, and you've got yourself a beautiful dipping sauce. It works an absolute treat with these mushrooms. How about that for a really delicious, simple, home-cooked meal? I hope you enjoyed today's recipe. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'll see you really soon in the next one. Till then, take care. Bye.